Masters of the Martial Arts Historical Video Series Collector's Edition, Part 2, Volume 1. Gishin Funakoshi. Universally known as the founder of modern-day karate, Gishin Funakoshi, father of the Shotokan system, was born in Okinawa in 1868. Funakoshi's first martial arts instructor was Yasutsuno Azato, with whom he trained while in primary school. In 1902, Funakoshi's karate demonstration for the Commissioner of Schools, Shintaro Ozawa, led to the introduction of karate into the physical education programs of several schools. He was responsible for the propagation of karate throughout Okinawa and the world. And in 1913, he formed a team of martial artists to travel across Okinawa to demonstrate the art. The team was compiled of many renowned karateka, including Choki Motobu, Kenwa Mabuni, and Chotuko Kayan. The first national sports exhibition in 1922 in Tokyo to publicly display karate jutsu. While in Japan, Funakoshi was introduced to Jigaro Kano, the founder of judo, who asked him to demonstrate karate at the Kodokan. Funakoshi's friendship with Kano grew, and they exchanged many ideas between the two arts. Kano adopted many techniques from karate jutsu for use in the judo system, and Funakoshi utilized Kano's ranking system for recognizing a student's qualifications and abilities. In 1933, Funakoshi changed the concept of kara from its original meaning of China, written in Chinese characters, to empty, and had it redrawn with Japanese characters. Next, he replaced the jutsu with do or wei. Hence the term Karatê-Dô, or empty hand wei, was born. This name change was due in large part to Funakoshi's philosophical convictions associated with martial arts. In Tokyo in 1936, at the age of 68, Funakoshi established the Shotokan, the world's first freestanding karate dojo. Shotokan means Hall of Shoto, and Shoto was actually the name Funakoshi used when signing his poetry. In 1955, Funakoshi was head of the first dojo of the Japan Karate Association until his death in Tokyo 2 years later. Funakoshi and his teachings influenced many prestigious martial artists, both directly and indirectly, including the aforementioned Jigaro Kano, Wado Ryu founder, Hironori Otsuka, Kyokushinkai founder, Matsutatsu Oyama, and Shito Ryu founder, Kenwa Mabuni.
this is on Gishin Funakoshi, and this is the karate tape on Gishin Funakoshi, as well as the 1956 video of the JK. David, what can you tell us about this tape on Gishin Funakoshi and the rarity of this tape?
It's very rare. I practiced karate for 25 years, and in the last probably 4 or 5 years, doing in-depth study into Funakoshi and the roots of Shotokan karate. And as far as I know, I've talked to many historians from England, from Japan, and here in America. Nobody had this film. So this film is very, very rare. I'm not exactly sure of the time frame, but we're looking at a date from approximately about 1949 to about 1955, in that time frame. Maybe we can pinpoint that. However, what you are seeing is a man who is in his 80s performing Iban Kumute, or one-point sparring. It is from 2 angles, and you can see very, very clear that Funakoshi is very, very exact. Okay. And one of the things that you'll notice is that Funakoshi stances, they're much more natural, approximately shoulder length apart. In karate, changed a bit after his death and got longer, but you're going to see Funakoshi, how he taught his karate. One interesting thing about this tape, when you see Funakoshi, he had a very, very strong grip. You notice that when Sensei Obata is punching in, Funakoshi parries the blow, but he's either got a hold of the wrist or the gi. He's like, just pulls him a little off balance. Funakoshi was very short in stature, even for Okinawan standards. He was, at best, 5 feet tall, 135 pounds at best. Sensei Obata was quite bigger, and many of Funakoshi's students were bigger than him. After all, he taught some American GIs. But you can notice that he could get inside of them. He would parry the blow, he would have this person off balance, and fire a very fast punch. What makes this tape extraordinary is that, again, when you start to look at people of his age in this era that can, walk or move around as agile as Funakoshi. This is what, all those years of karate training has done for him. And all those years date back to when he was a youth in Okinawa. Since Funakoshi was born premature, his date is a little obscure. For the record, they say he was born November of 1868. He altered his birthday to say 1970 so he could take some examinations to get into a medical college in Tokyo. And so he had to do that. So a lot of people say it was 1870, but it actually was 1868. He died April 26th in 1957. So that brings him up close to 90 years old, 89 years old. When you go back to Okinawa, when Funakoshi was raised, his father was of Shizuzuka, I'm not sure of this pronunciation, of samurai class. He was of samurai class, so there was a little bit status quo on Funakoshi's family. There was also a name change. I believe that Funakoshi's real name was Tomonagoshi, but was later on changed to Funakoshi. In any case, Funakoshi at a young age was taught the Chinese classics, and that's important because most Okinawans didn't have the opportunity to be educated. Work was very, very important. So Funakoshi was able to get an education at an early age, mostly through his grandfather.
Okay, and what was his relationship with the other masters of the other disciplines in Japan?
Okay, moving on. Funakoshi's major instructors, or two that he talks about, is Asato and Itoso. Okay, Itoso had other students, people like Miyagi Chojin, the founder of Goju, a legend in his own time. And if I could take just a minute to talk about Miyagi Chojin was recognized as probably the most powerful individual. His physical strength was probably the highest of like people like Kenwa Mabuni and Gichin Funakoshi. He was a very, very powerful man, a wealthy man. And Kenwa Mabuni, also a student of Itoso. Now, don't forget that these guys had trained with other people. Matsumura, Higaonna, a lot of different influence. But the relationship that the three of them had was very, very cordial and very, like dojo brothers. I think that they, at that time, the three of them didn't have a particular style. They just were studying Tote or Rokyu, Kempo, whatever they were calling it back then. It wasn't really called karate then, yes and no. But the three of them shared a common interest, and that was to train in karate and to hopefully to introduce karate to the world, because they believed that they were trained warriors. Now, what that meant was that the three of them believed that it was like if you gave somebody a gun, that gives you a lot of power. Okay? You can do two things. You can have a gun for peaceful purposes, and you can have a gun to take the life. The way they trained was almost the same thing. They had the power to take a life, and they had the power to use it for defense only. The three of them had that consensus amongst them. And so with that, they kind of had the same philosophy. So I believe that, and many, many references, when you talk to Goju people about Funakoshi, those who were around at that time have much respect for one another. I think that, like modern day times, Goju people stick with Goju, Shotokan sticks with Shotokan, Shintaro sticks with, beliefs of Kenwa Mabuni. But back in their days, when you ask about the three of them, they had tremendous harmony among each other, and they worked out with each other whenever they could, and helped out with each other whenever they could.
What can you actually tell us about the naming of the style of Shotokan?
Interesting. Okay, Funakoshi, besides being a great karate man, Funakoshi wrote a lot of poems, mostly about karate. And so when he signed these poems, he would sign it under his nickname, Shoto. Shoto translated means pine waves. And he got that name because many times when he left Azato's house or Itoso's house, he would have to walk through these paths that would take him through these pine trees. And this was when Funakoshi would think about, writing poems or think about nature in itself. And the pine waves, he thought, was a fitting name to nickname himself for these poems. So in 1935 or 36, when his students erected the first dojo, they called it the Hall of Shoto, and thus the name Shotokan. Kan meaning building, Shoto meaning pine waves. The Hall of Shoto was developed in 1936. Unfortunately, it was destroyed during the war in 1945. But that's how Shotokan, and it wasn't Funakoshi, even in his autobiography, he's honored, but he's not. He still believes at that time that karate should be one. Karatê-Dô, the way of the empty hand. However, Shotokan became a style, and it almost became Japanese. Obviously, its influence was in Okinawa.
Who else do we see on this video?
Oh, the video of well, there are two, as you can see there are many legends on this tape. You're going to see S.A. Obata, one of Funagoshi's senior students, who was at one time a member of the JKA but then left. You're going to see Sensei Nakayama, who probably helped JKA or made JKA what it is today. There are people like Okazaki, who's here in the United States in Philadelphia, Nishiyama, who's out in California, Ianoida, who's out in England, Kanazawa, also out in England. A lot of these people, Megami, he's out in Louisiana. So there's many people that are in that film that are still alive today.
Great. David, can you tell us how Master Funakoshi popularized karate in Japan?
Okay. Upon the request of the Ministry of Education and the Emperor himself, Funakoshi had already did a demonstration in Japan in like 1917, returned to Okinawa, but then was asked to go back. So in 1922, Funakoshi set off for Japan to popularize karate. If you look at that time era, what was happening in Japan was judo had a good foothold, kendo was very, very popular, and karate was something very obscure. What Funakoshi did when he went over to Japan was he did a few demonstrations, was widely received, but nothing happened. Funakoshi had to take residence up at the Mistajuka, a dormitory, which was a dormitory for Okinawan immigrants. And Funakoshi had a hard time trying to popularize karate. In fact, he lived so poorly that, he had to tell the cooks that, if you could give me something to eat, I would teach you karate. At best, at that time, he had maybe 10 students. So he had to work to clean up the place and take care of the mail just to survive in Japan. This is all taking place in 20. So he had a lot of dead time, but karate was always on his mind. So in 1922, he wrote a book, Rokyu Kempo. In this book, it's basically line drawings and Funagoshi's philosophy about karate, what it should be, and what kind of an attitude that you should have for it. And the book did very, very well. What happened was there was a big demand for it. Unfortunately, in 1923, a major earthquake happened in Japan. What it did was it destroyed the publishing house, and the book became it went off in obscurity. So now there was another demand to at least write another book. So 1925, 1926, in that era, Funakoshi wrote a second book called Tote Jitsu, or Rattan Karate Jitsu. And in that book, he uses a lot of photographs. And it's a little bit revised edition of the first one. That started to become very popular. But in that time frame, another major thing happened. The earthquake also did damage to the dormitory Funakoshi was staying at. There was a famous kendo master that was living at the time that his name was Hiromichi or Hirado Nakayama. He heard that Funagoshi's dojo or dormitory was damaged. So he allowed Funakoshi to come and teach at his dojo. And this is a major thing that happened in Japan, because it happens all the time now, but martial arts back then were like, this is kendo and you just do kendo, this is judo, you just do judo, and karate. And this famous Nakayama invited Funakoshi to teach on the off times. And because of Nakayama's influence, if Nakayama is allowing this Okinawan to teach karate, then this gentleman must have something of value. And Funagoshi's students started to increase. And from that point, Funakoshi did another smart thing. He went and introduced karate to to the universities. A lot of them claim, you know, he taught here first, he taught there first. That's up there, you know, how you look at it. But he got into the universities such as Keio, Hosei, Tokyo, and a number of them. And that's when karate started to really start to get popular. And Funakoshi would travel around to these universities at least once a week to see how practice came from. You're talking now in the 30s, when the Shotokan, getting back to when the Shotokan was developed, Funakoshi had 3 sons and a daughter. Funakoshi had a 3rd son named Yoshitaka, they're called Iko, and he was a very talented individual, a little bit bigger than his father and a little bit heavier, but a lot younger. At that time, you have to remember that, you know, Japan had Kendo as a sport and Judo as a sport. Back in Okinawa, karate wasn't done as a sport. Karate was done as self-defense. So the mindset in Japan is competitive, especially amongst universities. And so what was happening was that Yoshitaka, being of that college age, he could see that karate was very dry the way Funakoshi was teaching him. A lot of kata, a lot of makiwara. So the son was coming up with innovations to introduce, instead of sanban kumite, nippon kumite, 3-point span, 1-point span, to make jinyu kumite or free span, a little bit more interesting. The father allowed it to happen, but he never taught it. The style was very structured. For example, Funakoshi, in all his books or all his films that are available, you're never going to see Funakoshi doing a roundhouse kick. His karate was very, very simple. Front kick, side kick, that was basically it. But the son started to introduce the roundhouse kick, the back kick. And I guess Mr. Funakoshi allowed it to happen because he could see the interest of the students.
What is the basic difference, and does this film show the difference between Shotokan karate in its pioneer days and Shotokan karate of today?
Well, there's very small footage of Funakoshi, but what it does show is the basics, and it shows the stance level. I think that Funakoshi believed that you could stand approximately shoulder level apart and be very, very strong if your focus was there. And if you look at modern JKA stances, they're a lot longer. One of the pluses of that is that your center of balance is lower to the ground. You are stronger. It's harder to do. Your legs are longer, so you're deeper in your strength, your stance. So yes, there's some truth to the stability of the stance. The problem with the stance is that it's like physics. To get from point A to point B, you have to travel longer. And so therefore it cuts down on speed. They do practice speed drills, but I think Funakoshi's principle was stand naturally, make it focused, and you could still be as strong and fast. You don't have to get as deep. That's one of the differences.
In summary, on this videotape, is there anything that you would say is historical significance other than the footage on Funakoshi? On this videotape, can you sum up for the people who are watching, what are the things that they should be really watching for?
Okay, I think for people who are watching this tape that you can see that a lot of basics are done. A lot of basics. That people that are alive today and who are of high caliber spent a lot of time doing rising blocks or snap kicks over and over and over and over again. And I think that modern day people get bored with repetition and want to move on to other things. I don't know if that's good or bad, but you can see that these people spent a lot of time just training in the basics